What's been happening inside the committee as of right now?
Well, they're just going back and forth, Jose. Republicans and Democrats giving their opening statements in the committee right now. Of course, as you played a chunk from Benny Thompson, who is the top Democrat on the panel, you see this line of thought that Democrats are putting forward, that this is a political stunt, that this is nothing more than a sham. They're also saying that while Republicans are pursuing this impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, he's in the room in the Senate, not right now, but over the last few months, negotiating a bipartisan border deal to try and fix and address some of the very issues that Republicans are impeaching Mayorkas on the basis of, saying that he did not enforce proper law. Well, Democrats are pointing out that this is exactly what Congress is trying to fix to make sure that the administration has all of the proper authorities moving forward. Nonetheless, I want you to take a listen to what Mark Green, who's the chairman of the committee, had to say in backing up and standing behind this effort. Watch.
Today is a grave day. We have not approached this day or this process lightly. Secretary Mayorkas' actions have forced our hand. We cannot allow this border crisis to continue. We cannot allow fentanyl to flood across our border, our criminals to waltz in undeterred. And we cannot allow a cabinet secretary with no regard for the separation of powers or the rule of law to remain in office.
So listen, this is going to be an all-day hearing. We expect this to go for hours and hours as members make their case for why they're pushing this forward, and Democrats defend Mayorkas against this. But once this committee processes these two articles, then this will head to the House for a full floor vote. That has not been set yet, but Speaker Johnson certainly said that's something he wants to do soon. That said, though, it will all but likely die in the Democratic-controlled Senate, where they will probably acquit Mayorkas because they do believe that he did not do anything wrong, resulting in an impeachment, a historic one at that, as you point out.
Yeah, and Julia, so what are Republicans saying Mayorkas did or didn't do to warrant this impeachment?
Well, they're saying that he willfully neglected the laws of the land. And in this case, they're looking to Mayorkas to say, look, or what Mayorkas is saying is that he carried out the exact laws. In fact, there's a way that this administration constructed its whole border philosophy, and that was to make a carrot and stick approach, to make it easier for people to apply from their home countries, but harder for people to cross the border illegally. And so that's what they've been carrying out. They actually increased the bar to apply for asylum after the end of those COVID-19 restrictions in May. But because of sheer numbers, and this has happened time and time again, when the numbers at the border get so high, no matter what policy you have in place, it starts to fall apart because you simply have to release people so that you don't get overcrowded. The same thing happened in 2019 under the Trump administration. So they're putting this all on Mayorkas here, saying that the border, the busyness of it is his fault, and that this idea of catch and release is somehow unique to Mayorkas, where they've been doing that since the Bush administration, the Obama administration. They did it again under Trump. We've seen it in every administration because you can't simply detain people indefinitely, especially now that you have people coming from countries like Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua that are less likely to take those migrants back. And so they can't keep them indefinitely detained, and they're running out of space. And of course, if you're listening to those opening statements that Julie just pointed to, you could start thinking, well, what about a bill? Because there's a bill being negotiated in the Senate right now that would answer a lot of these problems. But instead, it's really all being pointed at the secretary.
Yeah, and I mean, there is the underlying fact that never in the history of the United States have so many people come into the country requesting asylum as happened in the month of December, more than 300,000. So, Susan, what's a political strategy behind impeaching Mayorkas?
Well, I think it's a strategy of distraction. There are these serious bipartisan talks that have been going on in the Senate. That's pretty much a rarity. Now that's been undercut, and instead we have what amounts to an unprecedented in more than a century use of impeachment against a cabinet official so that Republicans can attack what's happening on the border. We heard from former President Trump that the reason he has come out against this bipartisan bill in the Senate is because then Republicans would own some of the problem at the border. So he pretty much directly acknowledged kind of the politics of the situation, an effort to reap the advantages of immigration without trying to deal with the actual problem.
And there is the issue of the politics, but then also, David, there's the issue of the facts on the ground there. You're at Eagle Pass. Men, women, and children who have made the most difficult journey imaginable to try to reach the United States and ask for asylum. What are you seeing on the ground there, David?
Yeah, Jose, so we talk about this as a crisis on the border, but it's really much bigger than that, right? Across the globe, more people are migrating today than ever before in human history. Much of that is happening here in the Americas. Over the years, I've spoken to many of these migrants, and particularly what the families say, the people who migrate with their children, is that they are leaving situations that they consider untenable, whether that be the collapse of the economy in Venezuela or intense violence in places like Central America or Colombia or increasingly Ecuador. Now, I want to show you where I'm standing here in Eagle Pass. This is an entrance to Shelby Park. This is the park that the state of Texas shut down recently in order to prevent those families from turning themselves in to the Border Patrol. The river, the border between Mexico and the United States is just about 100 yards that way. That's where Texas has installed razor wire, shipping containers, buoys, all these measures to try and prevent families from crossing into the United States. Nevertheless, they have been arriving, as you said, just last month, in record numbers. Yesterday, there was a moment where a 4-year-old migrant girl almost drowned in the river and had to be rescued by the authorities. So no matter what policies are put in place here on the ground, whether at the state level or the federal level, because these are such massive global migration patterns, those policies are relatively limited in the actual effect they can have here on the ground. Back to you, Jose.
It's so important, David, to talk about such issues like root causes, and I'm glad that you mentioned those root causes in places like Venezuela, where the number of people have been just leaving that country as a consequence of the dictatorial regime that is there in place. In Nicaragua, we have similar situations. In Cuba, 63 years of a dictatorship. Haiti is a country where there is essentially no governing government. Julie, what more have we been able to learn, meanwhile, about what could be in that bipartisan Senate deal?
Well, Jose, I want to be clear, because even overnight, since Julie and I have reported our latest reporting on what's in this deal, things have still changed. So discussions are still in flux, despite negotiators telling us that they do want to release texts as soon as possible, as soon as potentially tomorrow. But what they do have in these proposals are authorities that will make it easier for the Biden administration, will make it easier for future administrations to enforce law at the border. And that includes, as you see on your screen, potentially shutting the border down when crossings reach those thresholds that you're seeing. 5,000 daily average over a 7-day period would automatically trigger a shutdown of the border. And the border could not be reopened unless they show sustained levels of those numbers of migrants decreasing at below 75% of the number that caused the border to close. So these are very significant things. It's something in the light of, just to put into perspective, if we are seeing the border numbers we've been seeing, the ones that Julia has been pointing out for months now, the border could still potentially be closed for months if this law was in place in, let's say, November, would not be able to reopen. There are also some mechanisms in place, though, to prevent administrations, to prevent presidents from abusing this authority by putting a restriction, a cap on days of the year in which they can use this authority at the border. They're also talking about things like raising the credible fear standard. In other words, making it more difficult for migrants to apply for asylum. These are all provisions that Congress has not been able to agree on in decades. They sound conservative, and that's because they are. And these are also the same provisions that Republicans, including Speaker Johnson, who I just heard from in a press conference a couple of minutes ago, say are just not going far enough. And the question is, if the Senate can get it together, if they come out with this bill soon, if they vote on it and process it and are able to send it over in the House, will Speaker Johnson put it on the floor, or will he refuse to do it based on calls he's getting from the former president telling him, listen, we don't need Congress. The administration, Biden, can do it all on their own. That's something we're going to be watching in the coming days.
Yeah, Susan, I mean, Trump continues to put pressure on Republicans not to support any deal that comes out of the Senate, saying on social media the bill will make Republicans look bad. Is the former president suggesting Washington just continue doing nothing so that he could benefit politically from it?
Well, that does seem to be the implication of that tweet. And let's not lose sight of the ground that President Biden has moved on in this issue by accepting this Senate bill. While we haven't heard all the language, we know it doesn't include a path to citizenship for the Dreamers. We know that it would enable the administration to push back asylum seekers if the numbers at the border got too large. These are provisions that President Biden would not have accepted at the beginning of his term. And there are provisions that will give him trouble with some in his Democratic base. And yet the administration now sees the situation at the border as such a crisis, both in reality and politically, that they are willing to accept it if the Republicans would go along, which, Jose, I think now seems unlikely.